Have you ever tossed and turned at 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling, crushed by an overwhelming sense of loneliness, feeling like an absolute failure despite doing everything right? You look at your bank account and feel a suffocating weight. You check your phone, hoping for a message from the person who walked away, only to be met with deafening silence. We are living in a world of unprecedented material prosperity, yet our souls have never been more empty and bleeding. When we hit a dead end, we usually turn to hollow words of comfort on social media, those brightly colored quotes telling you to just stay positive. But you and I both know the feeling of emptiness remains just that, empty. Today, we are not going to offer you toxic positivity. Instead, let us take you to a completely different place, stepping back thousands of years in history to open a profound playbook for survival based on the Consolations of Philosophy by Alain de Botton. Philosophy, in the eyes of many, is something dry, academic, incomprehensible, and utterly useless. It won't help you land a six-figure job tomorrow or buy a new Tesla. But when life backs you into a corner, when you are truly broken, philosophy becomes the only compass illuminating your lonely steps in the dark. From its Greek roots, philosophy means love of wisdom. Its core mission is not to lock itself in an ivory tower of complex words, but to offer the most practical, raw, and sometimes brutal words of consolation. Let's walk through space and time to meet 6 great master thinkers. They will not only soothe you, but equip you with the mental armor to completely reshape your reality.
The greatest, most silent disease of modern humanity is the addiction to approval. We are a society obsessed with likes, retweets, and validation. The desire to please others makes us willing to smile at bland jokes, buy clothes we can't afford, or lose sleep worrying over a toxic comment from a complete stranger on the internet. If you are suffering from this chronic people-pleasing, look to our first philosopher, Socrates. In the spring of 399 BC, Socrates was sentenced to death by a jury of 500 citizens of Athens by drinking hemlock. The reason he was condemned to die was simply that he dared to go against the common sense of the crowd. The Athenians of that time believed that truth depended on the majority raising their hands to vote. They had strict standards about which gods to worship, what clothes to wear, and exactly how to measure success. Socrates was the exact opposite. He wore an old cloak, walked barefoot through the dirt streets, and constantly asked quirky, uncomfortable questions to challenge people's blind beliefs. Think about it. If someone goes against common sense today, what happens? They get canceled. The crowd's first reaction isn't curiosity, it is pure, unadulterated anger. At that fateful trial, facing the ultimate cancellation, death, Socrates did not tremble, he did not beg, and he did not renounce his beliefs to save his life. Why? Because Socrates understood a profound psychological truth that we have forgotten. The disapproval of others never proves that you are wrong. He pointed out the hilarious yet tragic reality that the jury judging him consisted mostly of old men who dozed off in court, were easily influenced by theatrical plays, and acted on impulsive, unexamined emotions. Socrates compared blindly following the crowd to making pottery. You cannot make a solid clay pot merely by intuition. You have to carefully follow the technical processes of heating and glazing. Why then, for something a million times more important, like defining your own self-worth and happiness, do we entrust it to the superficial, unreasoned judgments of a crowd?
The practical lesson from Socrates is an absolute paradigm shift. Next time you are criticized, mocked, or judged, don't rush to cry. Ask your rationality. Is the person criticizing me basing it on logical thinking? Are they an expert? Or are they just dumping their own emotional garbage and insecurities onto you? Imagine you were an athlete training for the Olympics. You would only adjust your regimen based on the advice of a professional coach. You would never bow to the boos from drunk, ignorant spectators in the stands. Respecting yourself means yielding only to irrefutable truths, not the loud noises of the crowd.
If Socrates helps us survive the hammer of public opinion, our second philosopher will free us from an even heavier burden, the obsession with money. Today's society constantly brainwashes us. Every billboard, every ad tells you that happiness is a penthouse overlooking the city, a designer wardrobe, or a luxury vacation in the Maldives. Hearing about the philosopher Epicurus, the founder of Epicureanism, many quickly rumored that he was a debauchee living a life of endless orgies. The word Epicurean in the modern dictionary is even equated with luxury and gluttony, but these were malicious rumors. In reality, Epicurus lived extremely minimally. He drank water instead of wine, ate simple bread, and famously told a friend, "Send me a pot of cheese so that I may have a feast whenever I like." Epicurus realized a fatal flaw in human psychology. We are terrible at diagnosing what we truly need to be happy. We shop recklessly. It is much like a person with a terrible migraine who, lacking medical understanding, tells a friend to drill a hole in their skull to let the pain out. Expensive items are often used by us to simulate in the material space the things we desperately lack in our psychological space. You buy a massive, expensive Jeep, but deep down, you are craving the feeling of freedom. You buy a $1,000 bottle of imported wine, but in essence, you are starving for true connection and friendship. Epicurus redefined human needs. To be happy, you do not need a massive bank account. You only need exactly 3 things. First, true friendship. He advised that before eating or drinking, think about who you want to eat with, not what you are eating. A steak eaten alone is nothing compared to a cheap burger eaten with someone who understands your soul. Second, freedom. Epicurus and his friends left the bustling economic center, bought a small garden to grow their own cabbages, accepting less money in exchange for total independence, never having to take orders from detestable bosses. And third, analyzed thought. It is the ability to sit down, away from distractions, and analyze your anxieties about death, illness, and poverty to keep the mind at peace. When you crave a luxury item, pause. Advertising campaigns are cunningly deceiving you, making you confuse what is illusory with what is necessary. If your life is filled with friendship, freedom, and wisdom, even a simple meal of vegetables will bring you ultimate satisfaction. But if you lack those 3 core elements, you could sleep on a gold-plated mattress in a mansion, and you will still suffer from endless, echoing loneliness.
Leaving behind material desires, we must face the cruel, unpredictable vicissitudes of life with our third philosopher, Seneca, the ultimate master of Stoicism. Have you ever lost your temper and smashed your keyboard just because the internet was slow? Have you screamed at the steering wheel during a traffic jam or completely broken down after being laid off from your job? Seneca argued that such explosive anger and suffering do not erupt naturally. They stem from a dangerous, hidden flaw in your perception, an underlying, naively optimistic belief that the world was created to please you and that everything must unfold fairly. Seneca understood the utter cruelty of fate firsthand. He was plagued by tuberculosis for 6 years to the point of wanting to jump off a cliff. He was falsely accused and exiled for 8 years on the desolate, rocky island of Corsica. And the greatest tragedy, he was forced to commit suicide by his own student, the tyrannical Emperor Nero. Yet, even when facing an unjust, bloody death, he calmly turned to his weeping, hysterical friends and asked, "Where has your philosophy gone?" Seneca taught that this world is ruled by the goddess of fortune. She might smile and bestow wealth, health, and beautiful romances, but she can also coldly wave her hand and strip it all away in the blink of an eye. Disasters don't strike because you are a bad person being punished by karma. They happen because that is the blind, chaotic operating law of nature. A recession, a pandemic, a sudden layoff, none of these distinguish between the good and the bad. We harbor the massive delusion that the universe is intentionally mocking us, leading us to angrily and futilely fight back against reality. Therefore, every morning upon waking, Seneca advised a dark but powerful practice: premeditation of evils. Sit in silence and remind yourself, today, my clients might reject me, my car might break down, the person I love most might look me in the eye and say they are leaving, I might lose my job. Do not see this as toxic pessimism. This is how you forge titanium armor for your soul. When you have already anticipated the worst, disasters completely lose their destructive power to shock you. The Stoics used a wonderful, haunting metaphor. We are all like dogs tied to a moving cart, the cart of fate. A wise dog will choose to trot alongside the cart, maintaining a sense of freedom in its mind, adapting to the journey. A foolish dog, however, will dig its paws into the dirt, resist, struggle, and bark angrily. But the cart is too strong. The foolish dog ends up being dragged through the mud anyway, but with the collar choking its neck, causing excruciating pain. Rebelling against unchangeable truths only makes your wounds bleed more. Embracing adversity is the absolute pinnacle of freedom. But what happens when the adversity isn't external? What happens when the thing you hate most is yourself?
Even when we learn to accept external fate, we carry a sickening internal disease, imposter syndrome, and the insecurity about our own inadequacies. Confess it. Have you ever felt weird, ugly, or totally inferior when looking at the flawless filtered lives of influencers on Instagram? You carefully hide your physical flaws, your weird thoughts, and your awkward moments because you are terrified society will label you as abnormal. The 16th century French philosopher Michel de Montaigne is the cure for this self-hatred. Montaigne lived in an era that worshipped human reason and perfection. It was an era of majestic portraits of flawless royals, where mentioning anything vulgar or bodily was a massive taboo. But Montaigne despised that hypocritical arrogance. He pointed out that great intellect often just brings us more anxiety, ambition, and hypocrisy. He admitted that sometimes he looked at his dog or a goat grazing in a field and felt deeply envious of their ability to just live in the present without agonizing over the future. Montaigne used his writings to strip humanity bare. He reminded the world of a brutal, humorous, and deeply leveling truth. Even on the highest throne in the world, the greatest monarchs and CEOs are still just sitting on their own bottoms. They too have a digestive system. They get diarrhea, they burp, they snore, and their bodies betray them. Our bodies smell, sag, age, and harbor bizarre, secret desires. That is not a sin, that is biology. What society calls abnormal is usually just a rigid label imposed by narrow-minded cultural prejudices. Wisdom does not lie in your ability to quote Latin or solve algorithms.
True wisdom lies in how comfortably you sit with your own embarrassing flaws. Montaigne had a quote carved into his ceiling: "I am human, and let nothing human be alien to me." Do not hate your mediocrity. Behind the shiny Rolexes and glamorous LinkedIn titles, all human beings are incredibly fragile, awkward creatures, half wise and half foolish. Embracing our raw, unedited humanity is the miraculous cure that shatters the chains of self-doubt. From physical insecurity, we step into the most agonizing arena of all: a broken heart. Heartbreak brings a tearing physical pain in your chest, making you feel pathetic, unlovable, and worthless. If you are crying into your pillow tonight because someone you loved deeply just turned their back and walked away, the notoriously pessimistic philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer offers a perspective that is ruthlessly scientific yet incredibly soothing. Schopenhauer's own love life was a series of bitter disasters. He was once utterly rejected by a young woman who looked at him with sheer disgust. But from that agony, he saw through the greatest illusion of all. The reason you fall madly in love is not because of their beautiful soul or how they match your vibe. In essence, you are being hijacked by an invisible, immensely powerful biological force, which he called the will to life. Biology has completely duped your consciousness. When you lock eyes on a date, your natural instinct is subconsciously scanning and calculating whether the two of you can produce a next generation with a balanced physical and nervous system. A person with a hyper-dominant personality is naturally drawn to a submissive one to balance the future child. But here is the great, terrifying tragedy of love. The ideal genetic match to create a healthy child is almost never the person with whom you can live peacefully and be happy for a lifetime. Nature only cares about the survival of the species. It does not care one bit about your personal happiness once the biological mission is complete. Therefore, when someone rejects you on Tinder or when a relationship falls apart, stop tormenting yourself. That rejection does not mean you are a terrible, inadequate, or ugly person. It is simply the voice of evolutionary biology rendering a verdict. The genetic combination of these two individuals would be a mismatch. You might be perfectly suited to be best friends, but nature pulled out a red card, denying you permission to reproduce. To soothe this pain, Schopenhauer advised against drowning in whiskey or toxic resentment. Turn to art, music, literature, or philosophy. When you listen to a heartbreaking song or read a novel about unrequited love, you are elevated. You realize that your personal, agonizing pain is actually the universal script of millions of others. Art transforms our blind, pathetic tears into the profound power of empathy, allowing us to see ourselves as subjects of natural law rather than just whimpering victims. Finally, we set foot on the highest, most treacherous peaks of mental strength with Friedrich Nietzsche. Modern humans have become soft. We constantly seek to avoid difficulty. We binge-watch Netflix to numb our dissatisfaction. We use self-care as an excuse for laziness, and we pray to the universe for an easy, flat, ripple-free life. Nietzsche called this a cowardly, pathetic morality that completely stunts human potential for greatness. Nietzsche's life was steeped in absolute hell, endless chronic illness, migraines that felt like his skull was splitting open, brutal romantic rejection, books that nobody wanted to buy, abject poverty, and eventually descending into madness. Yet, staring into the abyss of his own suffering, he never rejected life. He boldly affirmed, "Joy and sorrow are bound together by an unbreakable chain. Suffering is not a glitch in the system. It is the mandatory prerequisite for greatness. You cannot demand a brilliant, massive life without paying the upfront cost in sleepless nights, sweat, tears, humiliation, and bitter, crushing failure. No one is born a natural genius. In his youth, the legendary painter Raphael was tormented by burning jealousy when he saw the towering talents of Leonardo da Vinci. But instead of crying about it or giving up, he turned that toxic jealousy into rocket fuel. He worked obsessively to rise and become a master. Nietzsche used a beautiful metaphor. The Phoenix Valley in Switzerland has the most extraordinarily fertile soil, growing vibrant green life. Why? Precisely because in winter it endures the brutal devastation of massive, crushing glaciers. The ice and snow violently plow the land and crush the rocks, leaving behind invaluable minerals for the spring. Your life is the same. The most brutal forces, the harshest heartbreaks, and the worst financial disasters are exactly what plow your soul, paving the way for the most powerful rebirth. Become a dedicated gardener of your own soul. Do not hastily uproot or feel ashamed of dark, ugly emotions like jealousy, anger, or extreme ambition. Instead, cultivate and prune them. Direct those thorny, aggressive vines up the trellis so they bloom into the sweet, undeniable fruits of immense success. Nietzsche warned us to avoid alcohol and cheap dopamine because they are anesthetics that paralyze the will to fight. Live dangerously. Build your city on the slopes of Mount Vesuvius, fully ready for it to erupt. Only when you have the courage to swallow the bitter ashes of adversity do you earn the absolute right to touch fulfillment on the highest peaks.
6 philosophers. 6 tragic, brilliant lives. 6 puzzle pieces forming a complete blueprint on how humans must face their own limits. Philosophy does not promise to pay your rent this month. It cannot text your ex to come back, and it has no magic spells to cure disease. But philosophy provides you with an impenetrable mental immune system. It teaches you to use reason to crush delusional expectations, use humor to embrace your flawed, awkward body, and use pure, unyielding willpower to forge your deepest suffering into the ultimate catalyst for your greatness. The heavy, suffocating pain you are carrying tonight, humanity has been carrying that exact same weight for thousands of years. You are not alone in this fight. Do not try to run away from the storm. Learn how to walk straight into the center of it with a calm, free, and dangerously wise mind. If these ancient truths have lifted a burden off your chest today, or ignited a dark, powerful fire of motivation within you, I want to hear from you. Drop down into the comments right now and share which of these 6 philosophers resonated with your current struggle. And if you are ready to stop living a soft, unexamined life and want to continue building your mental armor, hit that subscribe button. We have many more journeys ahead. Stay strong, stay dangerously wise, and I will see you in the next one.